So there I was in 2001, starting as a young neurologist, very idealistic and wanting to save my patients from all the bad things that can happen to them. And they would come in, let's say a person has a new stroke, and I evaluate their risk factors. And the risk factors, maybe they have to do with lifestyle, like maybe controlling blood pressure, maybe changing nutrition, maybe dealing with a tobacco habit. I'm talking about smoking. And so they have this stroke, and we have medicines that we use to prevent stroke. And when we have a discussion about what we're going to do going forward, and we talk about lifestyle, I didn't know how to talk about lifestyle, basically. The only approach I had was the one that was shown me, which was the educational approach. So I would go talking to my patients and educating them the associations between, let's say, high blood pressure, tobacco dependence, and certain nutrition styles, talking to them with the interest and the idea that they were going to make changes after I educated them. And I was dismayed when they didn't make changes. I just assumed that if they knew better, like when people know better, then we do different things. We have different behavior. That was probably naive now looking back on it. I don't know why I thought that. You think I'd know better, but we really hadn't necessarily had a discussion about this in medical school. I'm talking about the best ways to empower people to make changes that they also want to make. I've never met anybody who didn't want to be healthy. When people develop health conditions, they feel disempowered. And again, as I've said before, I suggest the most fundamental role of healthcare providers is to empower people. And so then what we need are skills of empowering people. I would suggest that there's more than education, because facts alone won't do it. Healthcare providers, we are very solid at dealing with the truth, dealing with facts, dealing with data, dealing with things that are very objective. It's how we do well at what we do. And also, we have become what we've become by being educated. And so it's kind of how we deal with our challenges. We deal with facts. So the educational approach is just one of several styles, you might say, of empowering people. So I had to learn some different approaches. And when I started studying this, I would realize that another approach is the direct approach. We're pretty direct. It's probably one of the more natural styles. If we work in an acute setting, let's say a hospital, emergency department, surgery or ICU, very direct. And the direct approach is essentially telling people, here's what you need to do. And you might think it doesn't sound very empowering. Now, sometimes the direct approach is very appropriate, directing approach. We're talking about the educating approach initially. Now we're talking about the directing approach. Sometimes it's very appropriate when people are going to not have as many choices in the future as they do right now. And so we need action right now. We're talking about things that are rapidly changing, emergency department, critical care, acute stroke, acute heart attack, acute things that are happening in, let's say, a acute care setting. A directing style works very well there. Now, as people started changing, I'm talking about as culture started changing, I'm talking about Google happening, Chick-fil-A happening, copays started going up. I'm just talking about various factors that have changed how we look at choice. Patients realize they have more choice now, and so they don't want to be directed toward anything. And now everybody feels like they have more access to information. And so the directing style doesn't really work in a lot of settings. The education style, as we've said before, educating style, it has limitations also. What we started doing is using kind of a following style, a following approach to empowering people. And that has limited application also. Now, basically, people will show up saying, I want an antibiotic, I want this, I want that. A lot of times, patients don't have the context to understand their lab results. They can Google things, but they don't understand where they go. And so the following approach doesn't really make anybody pleased with their experience over a long term. Healthcare workers don't necessarily like it because it's not very fulfilling to just have people that don't exactly know the whole context and they haven't had a lot of experience with this, just saying exactly what they want, and then they want us to fulfill those. And so, I've noticed that patients don't necessarily respect that approach either because they want to be in the driver's seat, but who wants to drive alone? And so that leaves us with the guiding style, which I find has the most application there is. The guiding style assumes that everybody has choice. Patients have choices, people that are providers have choices also, and we do better when we have suggestions that are offered by people that have a lot of experience dealing with a lot of other patients and a lot of other scenarios over an extended period of time. So we're talking about adding or offering suggestions, offering recommendations, sharing our learned experience down through the years, the guiding approach. That has more application, the most of the four ways of empowering people. Now, you might mix up the guiding approach with a direct approach. You might mix up the guiding approach with following to a degree. Maybe you'll mix guiding approach with educating, but the guiding approach is the one that seems to work the most. Now, what's the point of going through this? Well, it helps, I would suggest, when we are intentional about what it is that we are doing, when we are intentional about the approaches that are available and the one that we are going to use most of the time. It helps me a lot because it very much solidifies me in my role as a co-pilot for people. And they very much appreciate it, actually, having the guidance of somebody who thinks about these circumstances all day long and every day, and who's been doing that for years and years and years, and talking about it with other people who are also charged with filling those duties. So there you have it. Just wanted to share some of the ideas that are in Practicing a TLC. I've been referring to my book. It's available on Amazon, and it's available by many different mechanisms. Practicing TLC, and we're talking about the styles and approaches to empowering people, because when we develop health conditions, we tend to feel disempowered. And again, I suggest our fundamental role is to empower people by making sure they know we care and also making sure they're aware of their choices. Take care, guys. Keep winning.